Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Today with me, I've got Jessie Paterson. Hi, Jessie, how are you?
I'm really well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us
My
today.
pleasure. My pleasure.
So, Jessie, can you please introduce yourself to us and tell us about all the wonderful work that you do with kids going through anxiety?
Thanks. So I'm the director of Me, You, We Therapy, and I'm a family and couples therapist. And been the director of that business for coming up to 5 years. And in the last 2 years, I've also written a book of the same name, so Me, You, We Tribe. And it's a book based on, I wrote it initially for my son struggling with anxiety and transitions to school. And also that was around the time that their dad and I separated, and it was the struggles around that I wrote this book. Yeah.
It's fantastic. It really is it targeted towards a certain age group, or is the book available to, a wide range or age range?
So it's kind of pitched, it's for me when I do this for a job. But I was at that time still feeling a bit hopeless and helpless and out of skills. But it's skills that I've done within my parenting from when the kids were really little up until that they're the same strategies and things that I talk about in couples therapy.
Okay.
So it's kind of pitched, I guess, when you're reading it to the kids, probably 6 to 12-year-olds. But I really wanted to be a family book, that it's not reliant on the kids doing it for themselves, because they need us so much to co-regulate with them. So it's kind of, their life skills that we want our kids to have them, in terms of how they have relationship skills, how they regulate their emotions, which I would hope that they'll have forever. So I guess it's kind of the book, and it's also an audio book, is kind of from 6 to 12, but outside of there, you can still implement it. Yeah.
It's wonderful. It sounds really great. And I guess that leads us into the next bit, which is where people are going through separation and divorce. The question often arises, do I tell the kids? And if I do, how do I tell the kids? So what's the best way?
It's really tricky, because I think it's quite family dependent and age dependent on the kids sometimes. Mm-hmm. So ideally, right, we do tell them, because it is part of their story. It is part of their life, what's happening, and they will have that experience around the parents separating as much as the parents do themselves. So as an example, I'm separated, and when we told our boys, at the time they were 6 and 4, so with them I actually created a book, just like through PowerPoint, and I kind of had pictures of their dad and I together before we had them, when I was pregnant or getting married and pregnant, and then having them, and so family holidays with the eldest, and then pregnant again, and family holidays. And kind of when we got married, I superimposed like crowns on our heads, and like this was when we were crowned, Mr. and Mrs. White, and when we got, and this is when we got mummy and, crowns for mummy and daddy. Yeah. We're taking off our crowns for Mr. and Mrs. White, but our crowns for mummy and daddy stay on forever.
Now, what a brilliant way of putting it. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, and also, I think, because when I was reading it to them, as much as it was through tears, it also gave me something to anchor to and we're all there. It wasn't just me telling the boys. We did it as a family, which is really important, if the circumstances allow, right? So ideally, in some instances, ideally isn't that we do it all together, right? But if we can, that's better. And it gave me something to really anchor myself to, and that my emotions didn't take over, because in those moments, it's not about the parents, it's about the kids. Yeah. So it was just kind of through the tears, I just had to read the story, and it was kind of 1 or 2 sentences under each picture, and that was kind of it. And really making sure at the end, which we continue throughout that process of their healing, is that this not end. You know, if you still have questions, you can ask me at any time and I'll answer them if I can. And some I will be able to answer, and some we can work out that answer together.
Yes.
Because I think,
no,
yeah, that's a real time when when it's all new, right? Even to the parents, and they don't really have a grasp of what the future is.
Yes. Kids
really need concrete.
Yeah.
So whatever concreteness we can give them, we should give them. So if it's, you know, daddy's going to go and live here and mummy and you are going to live here, or you and daddy are going to live here and mummy's going to come here, whatever those arrangements are, that we tell them. And if they have questions around, you know, well, you know, and sometimes those details aren't on hand, right? Or how often will I go and see daddy? Or how often will I see mummy? And if we don't have those arrangement or details yet, you can kind of say, I don't, and it's beautiful and okay to say, I don't have the answer to that yet, but we'll work it out together.
Oh, I'm literally getting goosebumps just listening.
Oh, thanks.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Jessie.
Yeah, that's okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Then the next question is, does it matter the age of the children? So if, say, a child is approaching, you know, 18 months or even a year old, would it make a difference, or would you still tell the story, you know, via the PowerPoint?
I would, yeah. So like I printed mine off and I had it, and we still have it, and they go back to it sometimes. Okay. So my youngest, because he doesn't really remember that interaction. My eldest does, and he says, I don't want to read it again, but my youngest does. So I think it's like any book that we have on our shelf for them, that we can go back to it. Yeah. And that it's just them exploring their history. And one of the greatest predictors of our kids' life success is when they have a coherent understanding of their story and their past. So even if something happened to them and they didn't, you know, under one, and they didn't necessarily have language then, but their memories are still forming. So it's important to kind of, you wouldn't, you know, read them a full book or anything, and you could tell them in the way that you want to, and it would just be basic and simple. And like, even if you tell them at 7 or 10, the more you get, more age appropriate information as we go up. Yes. Right. So it just starts there, you know, and it's part of their story.
That absolutely makes sense, because like you know, apparently, you know, they say the mind stores all information regardless. It's always in our subconscious.
Yep.
Right. And I guess that leads me to, what about the other end of the spectrum, teenagers? Would you approach them in a different way, or would it be the same approach?
I think it would be different. I don't know if they'd want you to sit down and read them a book. They might. I think it would probably be more of a sit down and talk, you know. A lot of, when I've worked with families with teenage kids, a lot of the time actually kids know more than us parents hope that they do. Yes. A lot of the times they actually already know, you know, and sometimes it's kind of either I'm sad and we're going to cry about it, or it's relief, like, okay, good, about time. Yes. You know, but they still want the concreteness. Okay, but what does this mean? What does that mean for where we're going to live? Do we have to sell? What school do I have to go to? So they'll go a little bit more to somewhat the egocentric part, like the little kids will do, you know, and that's the other thing, to make it really clear that it's not about them. It's not something that they've done or haven't done, that it's really an adult decision, and it's not about how lovable or worthwhile they are. It's not even in the question. And it's that same message needs to be given to those teenagers, that it's not about them, that it's about the adult relationship between the parents. And again, when I've had those discussions, and sometimes telling the kids has actually happened in the therapy room, that the parents have decided that that's how it's going to happen. And other times the parents will come and we'll talk about how they're going to structure that conversation at home.
Yes.
It really depends on, you know, what the family or the parents are wanting. But it's really about giving them anything concrete that we can.
Yeah.
That when I often get questions around from the hurt partner, if there's been indiscretions or affairs or, you know, gambling and money's gone and things like that around, I'm really hurt.
Yes.
And how much do I tell them?
Yeah.
Because they can really be like, I want to tell them that mum or dad's cheated. I really want to tell them that that's why we're separating, because mum's done this or dad's done this, or, you know, and again, that's quite age dependent, you know, and also what's happening for the child, because again, sadly, a lot of the time kids already know.
That's true.
You know, which is really hard, and that breaks people even more a lot of the time.
Yes.
But if there's, it's can be quite dependent on the older we get. Sometimes it's the level, but I think the clincher, the underlying part, we can tell them that there's been an affair and that's why, and we've gone and we've got support to see if we can overcome it, and we can't, right? Or there's been this other thing happened and we've gone and got help and we've chose to consciously uncouple, you know, and it's not that I hate them and I hate them and we're, you know, but when we've really worked on it, and it's not, it's, you know, we can't be respectful enough for this to continue. But the same message seems to need, well, the underlying part throughout the story that we need to be giving them is that we're never derogatory or belittling or mean about the partner.
Yes.
No matter how hurt we are.
Yes. And that is crucial and very important, because kids can start taking sides, not because they want to take sides, but because they just, you know, feel more protective of one parent and are really angry on their behalf, or really, you know, but then it can escalate from there if it's not resolved.
Yes. And go.
No, I was going to ask you finish that, because my next question was going to be, what happens after that, when at one stage you decide the kids need some follow-up with someone, a professional, because of the level of anxiety?
I think the clincher in that question is their level of anxiety. Yeah. So if it's, the parents often come and go, I'm really concerned, or I'm really worried about my child and how they're coping. Yeah. And they can come in for one session and go, look, they're actually fine. Okay. It's more the parent's anxiety about it. Yep. And the parent, the one that needs the support around, how do I do single parenting? How do I do that to the best of my ability for the best of my child? And then it can be, so sometimes there is some attachment disorder becoming visible, or was already visible. Yes. You know, and it can go, absolutely, yeah, here we do need some support and some healing around what's happening and how we can give and support that child with anxiety, like strategies to work with their anxiety or their stress, or just, let's be honest, emotions in general. Yep. And to cope with, how do I go from mums in this environment to being adaptive to being like this in dad's environment? Yep. And how do I navigate that? And I find with the younger kids, it's a lot around that emotional regulation, around, you know, I feel like I really miss mummy when I'm with daddy, and how do I cope with that? No, they're not the words they use, but, you know, or when I'm with mummy, I really miss daddy, and how do I cope with that? Yeah. The older we get, and I'm really, I love the teenage generation right now, or it's just the clients I'm getting, because they're utterly brilliant. The questions that they come, I'm like, mind blown, right? They're so insightful and deep and inquisitive about what's happening and why it's happening. Oh, you know, sometimes they'll come in, I know, how do I cope when I know dad's lying? What do I do to cope with that within myself? Do I need to address him in any other way? What do I need to do? When mum's like this and mum's crying and sad because we're going to dad's, how do I support her and how do I cope with that? Because, and a lot of the time they're coming going, I know this is not my job. It's not my job to worry about and fix mum's sadness.
Yeah.
And it's not my job as their child to fix dad's lying.
Yes.
But they still coming in with like, how do I cope with this within me? And I go, you guys are wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually want to ask if the parents are being child focused and they can, help deal with their own emotions and then focus on what their children's needs are through that really difficult period. Are there worrying signs that they need to look out for? Things that once start happening, they need to, think about going the next step?
Big ones are regressions. So if they've had a regression in language or toileting or sleeping habits, or eating, right? They're kind of really big ones that we can really anchor into and go, they're clear signs that we're not coping.
Okay.
But so I'm not a fan of this term, but challenging behaviours. If we suddenly start having more tantrums or our children are exhibiting big challenging feelings in, hitting or kicking or yelling or screaming, or they're also signs, right? Particularly, even if it's been quite stable, they might have been like that before, but that's also an indication that help might have been needed before as well. And sometimes it's not massive, big interventions that we need to be putting in place. They're just small little tweaks in how we talk to them and the energy that we bring to our kids that can change things for them. It doesn't need to be that they need to come to therapy for years or that they need to bring I think the other big thing that I find is that parents feel if I go to therapy for parenting support or I take my child, I'm really saying that there's something wrong with my child or that I'm not a good enough parent.
Oh, okay.
And that breaks my heart.
Yes.
Because it's neither of those things.
Yeah.
I kind of think about therapy in the sense of going to the gym or enrolling them in a sport, right? We don't question that. We don't question looking after their physical health. I do swimming and jiu-jitsu, and I don't question that I enroll them in those sports that they're interested in and that we go at least once a week or, 3 times a week for jiu-jitsu. We don't question that. Yeah. But suddenly we question going to a mind gym or an emotional heart gym, right? And it's like, why? Those things are going to get us through life just as much.
Yes.
And probably more so. So it's kind of like, I'd like to take that stigma. There's nothing wrong with your parenting. If there is, great, come and get the support, and that shows awesome parenting.
Absolutely. Especially because they say going through separation and divorce is actually second only to losing a loved one through someone's death. Like the level of stress and it's a big deal. It's nothing that should be brushed or off or put under the hidden under the carpet, if you can call it that. Yeah.
I've often heard I was reading, a therapist kind of talks about childbirth, and when we first become parents, as our world kind of changes the axis that it tilts on. Mm-hmm. And I think separation is the same, right? We can talk about it like it's a bomb that's exploded our world, or we can turn it like the world is turned upside down, but it really does change the axis that that family is now spinning on. Yeah. And what was normal for those kids up until this one discussion where it's like we're separating, and particularly if they've been in a family where it's been something that's been thrown around often in fights, and their kids if they've overheard it, mum and dad threatening it but never following through. If it actually has come to the point where they're following through, extra sensitivity and that having a really clear, loving, respectful discussion is really important. Yeah.
What I was going to say is because the kids will reach out to someone, and if they're not getting that support from their parents, or the parents are not linking them, or getting them to see someone, you never know who they're going to reach out to and what sort of information is going to be handed to them, because it could be all sorts of wrong information, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there'll be those, like, even, we're amicable in my separation, but we still have those discussions. Well, I get discussions and questions from the boys to this day, and we're like almost 2 years on, still around, when will we get back together? Yeah. And was Daddy your knight in shining armor? And, or at one point, some things were being said that weren't overly supportive of me, and those things come home because they are sponges. Yeah. And then when things are being said to me, it's kind of like, how do I now, it's like, I'm siding with Daddy and I think this of you. Yeah. And it's like, how, that's hurtful. Yes. But I know in that moment, it's not about me, and how can I support my child? But that's because I've done a whole lot of work, and I see a therapist, and I've done my own healing around it. Yes. But when we haven't, because we're human beings and we're imperfect, and if we react aggressively or angrily towards the child, that's also not great. It's going to rupture that relationship. And there's already been a rupture in the other relationship, which we don't want. We want to, if there is, we repair it. Because we're humans, we're going to rupture our relationship with our kids at some point. Yeah. And to go, okay, how do I put them at the forefront? And yes, that can be exhausting at times. Yeah. Good
to hear that. It's good to know that it's not all smooth sailing, but that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that every single effort is worth it in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard this great analogy one day, and it's a concept I use in my book actually, around if we actually had things like this, yeah. And if we think about our heartbeat line, right? When the heartbeat line's doing this, we're dead, yeah. Right? Very alarming. If we want our life to be this, or our kids' emotions to be this, or our emotions to be this, yeah. We're dead. We want to be doing this, right? We want to be doing the up and down. It means we're alive, and as much as the bottom is hard, we're going to come back up. Yeah. And so will they. And it's a matter of, in those moments when we and them are down the bottom, it's just, I'm going to allow this to happen because we're meant to be here. And for our kids, bringing glasses to that with what skill are they missing to cope right now that I need to teach, because they're lacking a skill. That's it. They're throwing a tantrum, depending on their age, because their brain is meant to. We find that hard because they're not happy and we want them happy. But that's about us, not about them. So it's like, what skill are you missing? Right? How can I see you? And we all need that. We all need to be seen. And then we will come back up. And we'll do this. But that's brilliant because it means we're alive.
Absolutely. And touching back on what you said at the start of the interview, we're teaching them crucial life skills as well.
Yeah. And then sometimes we can get stuck in, like, academically, what are we going to teach them and what they need to have to get really good jobs. But as I said before, the greatest predictor of their life success is when they have a coherent understanding of their life. But their parents have a coherent understanding of our lives. And that's going to give them life success, right? And now employers, I should say, are looking for their emotional intelligence above their academic intelligence. And it's like, how can I give you emotional literacy? How can I give you emotional regulation? Yeah. Because that's what, when we're in that place and we're coherent, that's when we learn.
Yes.
And let's hope that, those relationship skills that we were teaching them in how we model and how we talk to them are going to stand them in better stead, right, for their future.
Absolutely. And the resilience as well that comes with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
been absolutely amazing, Jessie. Thank you so much for this amazing insightful interview. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I hope to see you again, because I felt like all these questions were popping up. So
I just hope
I need to schedule another one.
I hope it's helped, even if it's helped just one person to know how to navigate this traumatic time, that it's something, it's helped somebody. Yeah, definitely. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thanks, Nadia. Bye.
Yeah, bye.